Nurse's aide sees Billionaire's deaf mother, and the secret language she used shocked the son. Warning, the story you're about to hear involves $7 billion, figures, and high-stakes corporate secrets. Subscribe now, or perhaps this will be our last encounter. Let's dive into this story. The scent of old money was the most dominant smell in the penthouse. Not a fresh aroma, but that of sealed mahogany coffins and gold dust, heavy, cold, and oppressive. For Elena, who earned minimum wage per hour to care for the Sinclair family matriarch, this smell was a constant reminder of her own invisibility. She was just the aide, the type of person who served tea, administered medication, and changed silk sheets, but whose opinions and presence were as noticed as the dust she cleaned. "Will you ensure she takes all her medication, Elena?" Robert Sinclair's voice was deep, thunder that barely disguised his suspicion. He was leaning against the jamb of an ebony door, his gray eyes scrutinizing her every move, as if searching for a security flaw. Robert trusted no one, especially those close to his mother, Evelyn Sinclair. "Yes, Mr. Sinclair," Elena replied, keeping her voice as neutral and soft as possible, matching her beige uniform. She was finishing adjusting the orthopedic pillow for Evelyn. The matriarch was a pale, fragile beauty, deaf from birth, and recently affected by a disease that limited the mobility of her hands. Evelyn was trapped in a prison of silence and dependency. "Keep the door open. I want to hear. Or rather, see everything," Robert ordered, without moving a muscle. Elena nodded. Robert's disdain was a force field. He saw her as a mercenary, one more replaceable cog in the luxury care machine. The afternoon followed the silent routine. Elena's duty was simple: to care. But her true qualification, the hidden skill, was a secret she guarded like a treasure map. Elena not only understood ASL American Sign Language, but was perfectly fluent in tactile sign language, a rare system where people with deaf blindness read words by feeling the speaker's hands. Evelyn Sinclair used a peculiar variation of it, developed by the family. At that moment, the silence was broken by the noisy arrival of Malcolm Sinclair, Evelyn's brother and interim CEO of the company, the Villain. Malcolm was large, with a crocodile smile and a suit that seemed to cost more than the GDP of a small country. He carried a leather briefcase and an expression of false gravity. "Evelyn, my dear, I just need you to sign these routine forms. Just bureaucracy, nothing to worry about." Malcolm's voice was loud, slow, and condescending, as if the matriarch were a child. Evelyn, unable to hold the pen steadily, looked at Elena with a silent plea in her eyes. "I am the witness, Mr. Malcolm. I need to ensure Mrs. Sinclair is fully aware of what she is signing," Elena said, stepping forward, feeling the adrenaline rise. Malcolm rolled his eyes in disdain. "It's just the quarterly review of the stock portfolio. You're the aide, not the lawyer. Stay in your place." Elena's pulse quickened. "Stay in your place." That phrase hit her with the force of a punch, but she needed an opening. "It's protocol, Mr. Malcolm, for Mrs. Sinclair's benefit." "Allow me to help guide her hand," Alanala insisted. Reluctantly, Malcolm allowed Elena to approach, confident that the aide would understand nothing of what was happening, not even the language of the documents. As Elena gently guided Evelyn's trembling hand to the signature line, she used her other hand, hidden from Malcolm's view, to make a coded, ultra-fast touch on Evelyn's palm. It wasn't standard tactile ASL, it was an even older code, familiar only to her and the matriarch. "What is he doing?" Elena touched. The answer came, equally quick, in a series of virtually invisible and undetectable touches on Elena's hand, a secret tactile sign language. "Taking everything. Tell Robert. Inheritance, $7 billion proof, is in the safe. In the music room, Elena's body froze under her uniform. This wasn't a portfolio review. It was the transfer of company control and the theft of $1 billion fortune, with Malcolm declaring himself legal guardian due to mental incompetence. That document was Evelyn's ruin and the coup de grace for the Sinclair dynasty. She barely managed to maintain her composure as Evelyn signed her name. Malcolm snatched the briefcase, his crocodile smile now triumphant. He had no idea what had just happened under his nose. There, Evelyn, you're safe now. Don't worry about those ugly numbers anymore, he sneered, kissing her forehead falsely. He left quickly, the sound of his Italian leather shoes disappearing down the marble hallway. Elena stood still, the weight of $7 billion hanging over her shoulders. She wasn't a hero. She was the aide, the person with the most to lose if she spoke up. The secret was too big. She turned to the matriarch. Evelyn was pale, a silent tear running down her temple. She moved her lips, but there was no sound. I will tell him, I promise, whispered Elena, clinging to Evelyn's hand, feeling the thin, fragile skin. Tell him what, Elena? The sound was loud. Robert Sinclair was standing in the doorway, his cold expression harder than ever, and his gray eyes were fixed. Not on the villain who had just left, but on the suspicious intimacy between the aide and his mother. His mistrust was almost palpable, as heavy as the smell of money in the room. What else are you hiding, Elena? Air in the $50 million penthouse became thick and suffocating. The glow of the afternoon sun reflecting off the marble seemed artificial, unable to warm the ice in Robert Sinclair's eyes. He wasn't just asking, he was demanding. I asked what you were hiding, Elena, Robert repeated, his tone dropping dangerously. He took a step forward, forcing Elena to retreat slightly. The proximity was invasive, mixing the clean, expensive scent of his suit with the soft, medicinal aroma coming from her uniform. Elena felt her heart rate spin out of control, not from physical fear, but from the fear of being discredited. I'm not hiding anything, Mr. Sinclair. I was comforting your mother. She's upset. Mr. Malcolm bothers her. Bothers her? Robert scoffed, crossing his muscular arms. Malcolm is her legal curator, the CEO. He's here to ensure the transition goes smoothly. You are a nurse's aide, Elena. Don't meddle in $7 billion matters. The phrase nurse's aide was spoken with cold contempt, hitting her as a reminder of her position. He saw her as a self-serving liar, or, at best, a meddling employee. She turned, trying to speak directly to the matriarch, Evelyn. But Evelyn only grasped Elena's arm with desperate strength, the panic frozen on her face. She tried to move her lips, but only produced a low, guttural sound that Robert ignored. See? She's distressed, Elena. Your presence disturbs her. Gather your things and go. You're dismissed for the rest of the day, Robert decreed, turning to the intercom to call security. Elena's adrenaline spiked. If she left now, Malcolm would have won. Robert would be alone, blind to the conspiracy. He's not just bothering her, Mr. Sinclair, Elena interrupted, her voice suddenly firm. She was no longer pleading. She was declaring, your uncle just forced your mother to sign documents transferring total control of Sinclair Industries to him, claiming Evelyn is mentally incompetent. He stole her inheritance. Robert stopped. He turned slowly, incredulity and fury fighting in his eyes. You have the audacity to make up a story like that. Based on what? A caregiver's feeling? Do you know what corporate defamation is? It's a federal crime. I saw what he did, Elena insisted. He's using your mother's condition against her. The documents weren't for a quarterly review. They were a waiver. Robert laughed, a dry, humorless sound. He was with her for 2 minutes. You were busy guiding her hand. How did you see what was in 50-page documents? Elena knew she had to risk everything. Her invisibility was her greatest defense, but now it was her biggest obstacle. She looked at Evelyn, who watched her with silent supplication. Alina closed her eyes for a second, taking a deep breath, and then she did it. She approached Evelyn, took the matriarch's hand, and with the dexterity of an elite translator, moved Evelyn's index finger and thumb in an ultra-fast tactile code, a sequence Robert would never recognize. She was using it as proof. "You don't trust me, Mr. Sinclair, but maybe you'll trust your mother," Alina said, turning to Robert and revealing what Evelyn had just said in her coded touch. "She told me. Tell Robert the proof is in the safe in the music room. The code is 1972. A deafening silence filled the room. The contrast between the underestimated nurse's aid and the cold precision of the information she had just provided was shocking. Robert's face changed. Cynicism gave way to stunned shock. The music room was a location only the family and a few old employees knew. And 1972? It was the year he was born, an intimate detail that Elena, the mere Aide, shouldn't have known. His eyes met Elena's. Mistrust was still there, but now mixed with a dangerous curiosity and a terrifying recognition. She wasn't who he thought. How do you know the music room code? Robert barely whispered. He was inches from her. The scent of his expensive cologne and the warm breath on her face made her stomach churn. Alina backed away minimally, forcing herself to maintain eye contact. "I know the tactile code she uses. She's trapped, Mr. Sinclair. She's asking for help in a language only she and I understand," Alina replied. Robert stared at her for a long moment, assessing the risk, the absurdity, and the possibility that this invisible woman was his only hope. He reached out his hand, but not to grab her. He moved a finger to touch her arm, a hesitant, charged touch. "All right," Robert said, his voice now low and urgent, shifting from disdain to complicity. "You're not going anywhere. I need the key to that room, and an explanation. Who the hell are you, Elena?" The music room was on the opposite side of the main penthouse's cold luxury. It was a silent, dusty sanctuary, full of antiques. Robert and Alina entered stealthily, the tension between them more electric than the static in the air. He no longer looked at her as an aide, but as a cipher, a dangerous unknown. "If this is a setup, Elena, you're going to regret it," Robert hissed, the whisper loaded with threat. The safe was discreetly built into the wall behind a bookshelf of rare sheet music, as Evelyn had indicated. Robert entered 1972 on the keypad, but the safe remained sealed. "It's not working." "It needs a physical emergency key," Robert muttered, frustrated. Evelyn, who had insisted on being wheeled there, looked at the safe with teary eyes. She couldn't speak, but her desire to communicate was desperate. Elena quickly knelt beside Evelyn. She held the matriarch's hands and used the secret tactile ASL code. The exchange of touches too fast for Robert to decipher or even consciously register. "Where is the key?" Elena asked with her fingers. Evelyn moved her fingers with difficulty, sending the answer back. "First sheet, music, Chopin, torn cover, Elena stood up, walking directly to the bookshelf. She located the exact volume, an old Chopin book, with the faded and torn green velvet cover. Taped to the inside cover was a small, intricately worked bronze key. Robert watched in complete silence. Elena's precision was terrifying. She had communicated with his mother in a language he had no idea existed, and deciphered a decades-old secret. Elena unlocked the safe. The metallic click sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. Inside there were no jewels or money, but a large brown paper envelope and a small old surveillance camera, the type used to hide in objects. Robert grabbed the envelope. Inside was a notarized letter dated 6 months earlier, written by Evelyn and authenticated by a trusted family lawyer. The letter categorically stated that she was fully aware of her actions and that, Should anything happen to her, Malcolm Sinclair should be immediately investigated for fraud. He lied, Robert whispered, feeling the rough paper in his hands. Fury bubbled up, overcoming his mistrust. He told me she had been incompetent for the last 18 months, but the most damning evidence came from the small camera. Alina carefully picked up the camera. This isn't just for recording, Mr. Sinclair. It's a custom-made encrypted data transmission device. My bet is that Mr. Malcolm installed it in the room, attempting to monitor what your mother communicated through gestures, ... But he made a mistake. She connected the camera to a discrete app on her phone. Robert watched the video appear, shaking slightly. It was Malcolm's meeting with Evelyn 3 days earlier. In the video, Malcolm was impatient, trying to convince her to sign. Evelyn was gesturing, her hands moving in perfectly clear ASL. But the camera's audio had been digitally manipulated by Malcolm to sound like unintelligible babbling. However, the camera, being old, had captured the metadata of Evelyn moving in her tactile dialect. Elena quickly disabled the audio manipulation in the metadata track, revealing a secondary track of vibrations. The robotic voice from Elena's app began to narrate the tactile ASL that Evelyn was signing in front of Malcolm. "You are stealing from me, Malcolm. You will pay for this. Robert will know the truth. Control of Sinclair Industries belongs to him, not to your greed. ... Quotes, the video was irrefutable forensic evidence. It wasn't just a recording of gestures, but a timed and decrypted evidence of Malcolm's betrayal, capturing the exact moment Evelyn revealed the plan. Robert looked at the screen, then at his mother, and finally at Alina. The shock on his face was complete. The nurse's aide, whom he saw as a ghost, held the one thing that could bring down the $7 billion CEO. He turned to Elena, but there was no more disdain, only a dangerous tension of attraction and mystery. He was shocked by the conspiracy, but even more shocked by the person in front of him. No nurse's aide used encrypted surveillance metadata decoding apps. His gray gaze swept over Elena's face, now free of the mask of neutrality, revealing a sharp intelligence and icy determination. He gently grabbed her arm, his touch now intimate and urgent, the fear of loss replacing the disdain. "Who the hell are you, Elena? What else are you hiding?" Robert's touch on Elena's arm was a tug-of-war between the lingering suspicion and desperate need. The fear of contempt had been replaced by the fear of losing her, now that she was the only bridge to the truth. "What are you hiding? Answer me," Robert demanded again, but this time the tone was one of pleading, not command. The scent of his expensive suit was overshadowed by the smell of corporate panic emanating from him. Elena released the breath she didn't know she was holding. Evelyn's fragility was her shield. She couldn't afford to break now. "What I am hiding, mister? Sinclair is the only thing that can save your family and your company. I am the evidence," Elena said, her voice a thread of steel. "I grew up in a home for deafblind children. My best friend was deafblind. Tactile ASL is not just a skill. It's my first language, the one that connected me to the world." She didn't tell him about the traumatic past or her true qualification. It was still too soon. But that part of the truth was enough to establish trust. Robert released her, stepping back to absorb the impact. He looked at his mother, Evelyn, who smiled weakly from her wheelchair. The matriarch was finally seen through the eyes of her aide. "So, you're not just an aide. You're a translator who pretended to be." "Invisible," Robert stated, the weight of his words heavy. "People don't trust those who speak with their hands," Alina countered, with a touch of bitterness. "And they never trust a nurse's aide talking about a $7 billion embezzlement." Robert nodded slowly. The perception of social contrast hit him hard. He had been the skeptic, the wealthy man who underestimated those on the lowest rung. "I get it. And you're right. If I go to the board with a video deciphered by the nurse's aide, they'll call me hysterical. And Malcolm will destroy me, he admitted, the humility surprising in his voice. He looked at Elena, the attraction growing, fueled by her courage and hidden intelligence. What do we do now? Malcolm has control. The stock transfer will be finalized in 48 hours. We need a renowned forensic expert to validate the decoding. Technology of this video and attest to your mother's translation, Elena responded, already in strategy mode. And we need a distraction to find the key to Malcolm's digital files. Robert went to the nearest mahogany desk and picked up the secure line phone. I know who to call. Dr. Eris Thorne, the best in forensic communication analysis. But to get access to his files, I'll need you. Elena raised an eyebrow. Me? I can barely get into Malcolm's office. Not the office, his house. Malcolm is hosting a charity gala in 24 hours. It's where he likes to display his new power before the board votes. If you go as my date, the idea was absurd, bold, and electrifying. Elena, in her beige uniform, transforming into something Robert could present to the elite. Your date? Elena repeated, feeling a flush creep up her cheeks. Yes, think about it. As a nurse's aide, you're invisible. As my guest, you'll have access to everything and everyone, Robert explained, leaning toward her, the urgency of his mission mixed with undeniable chemistry. The proximity was dangerous. The scent of his rich cologne was almost intoxicating. Robert's eyes, previously cold, now gleamed with the fire of conspiracy. No one will notice the matriarch's assistant, but they will notice the woman I chose. And Elena, he lightly touched her face, a touch that sent shivers down her spine. You need to transform. You won't pretend to be invisible anymore. He handed her a sealed envelope. Your new wardrobe and your access credentials. You have 24 hours to become the woman Malcolm will never expect. Are you willing to take that risk? Elena felt the weight of the envelope and the weight of Robert's gaze. She was entering their game, their world, risking her life and her career. Malcolm didn't just steal $7 billion. He stole the voice of a vulnerable woman, Elena said, squaring her shoulders. The stakes are high, but the revenge is worth it. She looked at Robert, the partnership now sealed, the romance still nascent. But know this, the moment I walk into that party, I'll be your greatest ally, or your greatest ruin. Are you willing to take that risk, Robert? The 24 hours were a blur of stylists, makeup artists, and a frantic pace that Elena, in her life as an aide, had never been exposed to. The scent of hairspray and expensive perfume hung in the air of the guest room Robert had arranged for her. In the end, the transformation was stunning. The beige uniform gave way to a midnight blue evening gown, designed to flow like water, with an elegant neckline that accentuated her collarbone and a cut that elongated her silhouette. Her hair, usually tied back in a practical bun, now fell in soft, shiny waves. The makeup was subtle, but highlighted her eyes, which seemed even more intense. She looked at herself in the mirror, and for a moment, she didn't recognize the woman in front of her. It was a reimagined Elena, an invisible queen, ready to reign in the shadows. When Robert saw her descend the penthouse stairs, he stopped. His gray eyes swept over her from head to toe, not with the suspicion of before, but with an admiration he didn't bother to hide. The knot of tension in his jaw relaxed for a fraction of a second. Wow, you look stunning, Elena, he murmured, his voice slightly hoarse. The proximity was a delicate dance of glances and the anticipation of what was to come. A blush rose to Elena's face. She felt the chemistry between them, a thin thread that grew stronger with every moment of complicity. But there was no time for romance. The mission was everything. It's still me, Robert. Just in a more expensive disguise, she said, an ironic smile playing on her lips. And you, Mr. Sinclair, are you ready to present your new guest? He smiled, a genuine smile that rarely reached his eyes. Ready. Remember, we are a team. You need something, a look, a signal. I'm with you. Malcolm's gala was a sea of sequins, diamonds, and forced laughter in the grand ballroom of a five-star hotel. The smell of champagne and ambition suffocated the air. Robert entered with Alina, and conversations ceased. All eyes turned to them. The murmuring began, quick and sharp, like bees. Who is she? I've never seen her with Robert. A new conquest? Malcolm was at a makeshift podium giving a speech of false modesty about his new management of Sinclair Industries, the possession of $7 billion still fresh in his hands. He was accompanied by his lawyer, Dr. Celeste Dubois, a woman with a gaze as sharp as her perfectly polished nails. Robert approached Malcolm, a snake-like smile on his face. Congratulations, Uncle Malcolm. Quite a party. He introduced Elena. This is Elena. Malcolm swept over her with a look of disdain that Elena knew well. She was just a pretty face, one more distraction for Robert. Charming. Enjoy yourselves. Elena felt the contempt, but inside, she was burning with her purpose. She needed to find Malcolm's digital file, the key to his network. She knew he wouldn't be stupid enough to carry it with him. She needed a target, someone close enough to him to have access or know where the file was. Her eyes scanned the crowd looking for signals. Not obvious gestures, but small movements, postures, the body language of anxiety or complicity. She noticed Dr. Celeste Dubois. The lawyer seemed nervous. As Malcolm spoke, Celeste constantly touched a small silver bracelet on her left wrist. A repetitive movement, almost a nervous tick. Elena, with her visual acuity trained for nonverbal language, realized it wasn't a simple tick. There was a pattern. A subtle sequence of touches, thumb on the wrist, middle finger on the same spot, then the index finger. She felt a pang of recognition. That was a code. She watched longer. Celeste seemed to be responding to an invisible signal from Malcolm himself. A wink, or a subtle hand gesture behind his back. The jealousy of one socialite in particular, a former girlfriend of Robert's named Victoria, almost ruined her concentration. Victoria approached, a venomous smile on her face. So, Robert, who's the new thing this time? Does she have anything to offer besides a pretty face and a low-cut dress? Or will she disappear in 2 weeks too? Robert moved closer to Elena, his hand resting on her back, a gesture that seemed protective and possessive. Elena offers something that no money can buy, Victoria. Loyalty and intelligence. Things you never understood. Robert's intervention protected her, but Elena couldn't afford to be distracted. She needed to decipher Celeste's code. She moved away from Robert for a moment, as if getting a drink, and positioned herself near a mirror, discreetly observing Celeste. The lawyer received another subtle instruction from Malcolm. Celeste touched the bracelet again. Elena began to decipher the disguised, tactile language Celeste was using. It wasn't standard tactile ASL, but her own variation, a kind of security code that Celeste used to memorize important information. What was she typing on her wrist with her thin fingers? Elena saw the sequence. COF-EE-EE-EE-EE-EE-RIUM. A location, coffee table, aquarium. Where? The shock resonated through her. It was the location of an external hard drive or a hidden storage device at Malcolm's house. Celeste was, unknowingly, giving away the location of the evidence. As Elena deciphered the last letter, she felt a cold touch on her shoulder. It was Malcolm, with his crocodile smile, his eyes piercing her like X-rays. You're very observant for a guest of Robert's, Elena. Or perhaps you are more than just an escort. What exactly are you looking for? Malcolm's smile was icy, but Elena didn't flinch. She held his gaze, the sharp intelligence behind the gala disguise. I'm appreciating the art, Mr. Sinclair. I have a special appreciation for details that others ignore, Elena replied, her voice calm, contrasting with the frantic pace of her heart. Robert intervened, sliding his arm around Elena's waist with possessive ease. "Malcolm, you're robbing us. It's time to get back to the party, darling." Robert guided her away from the villain, his hand firm on her back. As soon as they were out of earshot, he pulled her into an isolated corner. What was that? He noticed something. "What did you get?" Robert asked, his breathing shallow. Elena could barely speak, the adrenaline making her dizzy. His lawyer, Celeste. She was communicating with him, but in a way that only she and I could decipher. She was typing a location on her bracelet. It's the location of the digital file he's hiding before the board vote. And the location? Coffee table, aquarium. At his house, Robert. We need to go now. The file must be there. Robert didn't hesitate. He sent a quick message to Evelyn's driver, instructing him to take them to Malcolm's residence under the pretext of retrieving a forgotten item. Within minutes, they escaped the ostentation of the party and were heading toward Malcolm's fortress. Malcolm Sinclair's house was a masterpiece of discreet surveillance and impenetrable security. "He's not here. He'll be at the party for hours." "But the security is automated," Robert whispered as he disabled the first door sensor with an emergency code he had memorized from childhood. They entered the living room, which looked like a modern mausoleum. Robert went straight to the only low coffee table made of polished concrete, which stood in front of a built-in saltwater aquarium. "It must be here," he said, fumbling under the table. Elena saw what Robert missed, the perfectly smooth surface of the aquarium. Her eyes, trained to notice the slightest variation in the matriarch's environment, noticed a flaw. There was a slight distortion in the water near the base of the aquarium, where the glass surface met the table. "It's not under the table, Robert. It's in the glass," Elena said, pointing to the tempered glass panel that formed the front side of the aquarium. Robert approached. "What? There's nothing there." Elena touched the glass at the base. "There's a disguised fingerprint sensor, almost invisible. What if Celeste's tactile code isn't just the location, but the activation password?" She recalled the exact sequence Celeste had typed on her wrist, but the literal translation was useless. She needed the actual access code, the letter code. Elena closed her eyes and recreated Celeste's movement on her own wrist, feeling the tactile pattern. If Celeste was using the bracelet to memorize, the pattern of touches could correspond to the sensor's alphanumeric keypad. She opened her eyes and, with her fingertip, touched the aquarium sensor in the exact sequence of tactile simulated touches Celeste used. Click. A section of the aquarium glass, which was camouflaged in the structure, slid to the side, revealing a dry compartment. Inside, there was a single silver portable hard drive. "You did it! I don't believe it!" Robert grabbed the disk, his hands almost trembling. The smell of victory was close. "It's not over yet." "Malcolm is paranoid," Elena warned, feeling a shiver. This was too easy. The moment Robert unplugged the disk, a red light pulsed on the ceiling and a metallic, recorded voice echoed in the room. "Illegal access. Lockdown protocol. All data is being formatted. Time remaining. 60 seconds. Robert froze. A trap. He knew someone would come. He activated remote formatting. "We need the firewall fast," Elena exclaimed. "My laptop is in the car. We don't have time." Robert looked at Elena, their trust put to the test. He was the billionaire, she the aide. But she was the only one quick-witted enough to handle encryption. "Your cell phone. There has to be a way. That decoding app of yours. Can it create an emergency backdoor?" Robert pleaded, handing the hard drive to her. Elena's face was ashen, but her eyes shone with determination. She grabbed the disk. Time was running out. 45 seconds. "It's not a common backdoor," she said, connecting the disk to her cell phone with a small adapter. "It's a reverse virus. I can force the disk to rewrite the formatting command to an infinite loop. That will buy us time, but It will expose my software. And my past. She looked at Robert, her gaze more intense than ever. She was about to reveal her true qualification. Who I really am, ... The timer screamed. 20 seconds. Robert held her arm, the touch comforting, the complicity absolute. I don't care. Trust me, do it, Alina. She pressed the button on the app, and the phone glowed with fast-running green code, fighting against the red of the hard drive. At the very last instant, when the timer reached 1 second, the hard drive stopped flashing. The formatting command was in a loop. They had time, but they were exposed. Elena looked at Robert, the gala makeup blurred by sweat. I'm not just a translator, Robert. I was a cyber communication security specialist for the government. I had to go into hiding after a high-risk case. And Malcolm just triggered my most secret virus. The silence in the room was as threatening as the timer. Robert touched her face, pushing away a strand of hair. The admiration in his eyes was now a deep, undeniable feeling. He saw the strength and vulnerability behind the disguise. I love you, Elena, Robert whispered, the confession escaping him with the urgency of danger amidst the billion-dollar theft and the threat of exposure. He pulled her to him, and the first kiss happened. A desperate contact, loaded with risk, alliance, and the promise of an uncertain future. The adrenaline of the invasion and the urgent kiss at Malcolm's mansion had cemented Robert and Elena's partnership into something much deeper. They returned to Sinclair Towers, no longer as boss and employee, but as intimate allies and fugitives. In Robert's luxurious and austere apartment, Elena felt the contrast between her former life and the dizzying present. She was sitting on the floor of Robert's server room, Malcolm's hard drive connected to a secure network. The smell of strong coffee mingled with the cool air of the apartment. As they worked side by side, the silent complicity more intense than any dialogue. You saved everything, Elena, if it weren't for your reverse virus. Malcolm would have formatted the data and destroyed us, Robert said, his voice laden with a gratitude that bordered on love. I learned a lot with the government. When you work with cybersecurity at the state level, you learn that the best defense is subversion, Elena replied, her fingers flying over the keyboard. The revelation about her life as a cyber communication security specialist hung in the air. Robert didn't ask immediately. He gave her the space she needed to open up. I wasn't just a translator, Robert, Elena began, her voice low. I worked decoding communications for an agency. My last case involved an international criminal organization that used tactile encryption in music codes. I managed to dismantle them, but they found me. My identity was compromised. They threatened me. I had to disappear. Living as a nurse's aide was the perfect disguise. No one would ever look for a security engineer in a beige uniform. She looked at Robert, her vulnerability exposed. I was tired of running. I was tired of being Dr. Elena Silva. But then I saw what Malcolm was doing to your mother, making her invisible, and I couldn't stay silent. I needed to use that skill again, even if it was the most dangerous thing. Robert moved closer, not with pity, but with deep respect. He gently touched her hand. I understand. You were hiding. But your courage ... that wasn't hidden. You are the strongest woman I have ever met, Elena. The moment of intimacy was interrupted by a knock on the service door. It was Dr. Eris Thorne, the forensic expert Robert had called. Eris was tall, with an air of immediate authority and a look that assessed everything. In minutes, Robert presented the evidence. The old surveillance camera, the secret tactile ASL recording, and Malcolm's hard drive in the formatting loop. Eris examined the video and the tactile code with professional skepticism, but as Elena narrated the decoding process and the sequence of Celeste's tactile code, Eris's eyes widened. Elena, your method of vibrational metadata decoding is ... cutting edge. This is not something a nurse's aide knows, Eris stated, looking from Robert to Elena. This evidence is irrefutable. The video, along with Evelyn's notarized letter, is enough to initiate a criminal investigation against Malcolm. The matriarch's translation about the $7 billion theft is now valid forensic proof. The victory was sweet, but brief. A moment later, Robert's phone rang. It was Malcolm's head of security, cold and threatening. "Mr. Malcolm Sinclair knows what you did. Your virus on the hard drive was traced back to this apartment. He's coming, Robert, with private security. He wants the disk and the woman who betrayed him. You have 15 minutes to open the door." Robert hung up the phone, his face pale. "He's here, and he wants you. I can't allow that." Robert grabbed the security briefcase from the safe and began putting in the documents in the hard drive. "We're going to use the service tunnel. We have to get out of here." Alina felt the panic, but her mind was clear. She was the proof, and the target. As Robert prepared for the escape, he stopped at the door and turned to Alina. The imminent threat removed all barriers. The love, born under pressure, was the only remaining truth. He pulled her to him, his hand on her neck, and kissed her with a depth that sealed their fate. It wasn't a kiss of blind passion, but a kiss of alliance and promise. The scent of his expensive suit mingled with hers, a complete fusion. "When this is over, I want everything with you, Elena. No matter who you were, no matter who you have to be. I love you. You are my partner. My life," he whispered against her mouth. "We're going to take him down, Robert," Alina promised, her eyes shining with tears and determination. "We're going to vindicate your mother, and I will never hide again." The sound of cars braking abruptly on the street, 40 floors below, faintly echoed. "Malcolm is here. We need to go." Robert and Alina escaped the Sinclair Towers through the service tunnel. Minutes before Malcolm's security invaded the apartment. The hasty escape did not diminish the intensity of what had been confessed and sealed. The kiss had transformed the tension into a shared purpose. "He knows we have the disk. He's going to call the board and try to discredit us before we can do anything," Robert said, driving the armored car at high speed. The smell of burning rubber and the cold fog of the New York night filled the car. "He can try, but he won't succeed. He still needs my silence about the reverse virus technology," Elena replied, the hard drive and Evelyn's tactile video safe in her bag. "He knows that if the board finds out he was trying to format digital evidence, it will be the end of him." They took refuge in a modest hotel suite, far from the Sinclairs' ostentation, but with executive-level security. It was time for Alina to step out of the shadows. "The Aide disguise is over, Robert. He gave us an advantage. The fear of exposure. We will use it," Alina declared. She opened her laptop and, with the dexterity of someone who had previously dismantled international crime networks, accessed Malcolm's email using the information they had extracted. She sent a terrifying yet controlled message. The message, sent from Malcolm's email to all members of the Sinclair Industries board, was simple and fatal. "Dear all, a grotesque error has been made. My curatorship of Mrs. Evelyn Sinclair is compromised by irreversible forensic communication evidence. If an extraordinary meeting is not scheduled within 3 hours to discuss my resignation and Evelyn's vindication, all evidence will be released to the FBI and the New York Times. I recommend you read the attachments." The attachments were Evelyn's notarized letter and a snippet of Malcolm's tactile video, authenticated by Dr. Eris Thorne. The bomb exploded. The digital smell of corporate desperation hung in the air. The board, fearing public ruin and federal intervention, called an emergency meeting in just 2 hours. "They took the bait," Robert said, reading the board chairman's reply. "They're going to meet us at the conference room on 5th Avenue. But, Alina, they won't listen to me. They need an authority, a new face, someone who isn't me." Alina stood up, taking off the crumpled gala dress. Her attitude had changed. The aide had disappeared, replaced by Dr. Elena Silva, forensic communication consultant. She put on a perfectly tailored suit that Robert had hastily arranged, her hair now pulled back in a high, professional ponytail. She had the presence of someone who knew the price of power. They won't listen to the heir who wants to protect his mother. They will listen to the specialist. I will enter that room first. I am the evidence. And I will force Malcolm to expose himself, Elena said, the determination in her eyes the only makeup she needed. Robert looked at the woman in front of him. He loved her, not for what she looked like, but for the courage and the mind she possessed. I love you. But this is dangerous, Robert said, his voice tense. If he tries to silence you, ... double quotes. Elena smiled, a small, fearless smile. He tried to silence me when I was just the aide, and now, I am Dr. Silva. Malcolm will see me, Robert. For the first time in his life, he will see the person he underestimated. They left the hotel, marching toward the confrontation. Are you ready to see vengeance, Robert? Because Dr. Silva is afraid of nothing, Elena said, her gaze fixed on the Manhattan skyline where Malcolm's ruin awaited. The Sinclair Industries boardroom on the 40th floor of Fifth Avenue was the pinnacle of corporate power, an oval table of polished ebony and windows that framed the Manhattan skyline. The air was heavy, charged with the tension of men and women who saw their $7 billion at risk. Malcolm Sinclair was there, pale, but wearing his arrogance as armor. He knew he was cornered, but he relied on his power of intimidation. The door opened, and Elena entered first. She was no longer the invisible aide. She was Dr. Elena Silva. Her presence, dressed in a dark suit and an unwavering posture, stole the focus. Robert entered right behind her, the tension in his jaw evident. Gentlemen and ladies of the board, the chairman began, visibly nervous. We have been urgently convened to analyze serious evidence presented by Dr. Elena Silva and Mr. Robert Sinclair. Dr. Silva, please begin. Elena placed the hard drive and Evelyn's tactile video on the table, the dry sound of the metal echoing in the room. The silence was total. I am a forensic communication consultant, and I was Mrs. Evelyn Sinclair's nurse's aide. In this last role, I witnessed the crime, Elena declared, her voice firm and clear. Mr. Malcolm Sinclair used fraud and coercion to gain total control over his sister's $7 billion inheritance, claiming her mental incompetence. Malcolm stood up, red with fury. This is nonsense! Slander from a disgruntled employee. And who is this Dr. Silva? Robert, what kind of farce is this? Elena ignored him, connecting Evelyn's small camera to a monitor in the room. The evidence is here. This camera recorded the exact moment Evelyn tried to communicate with Robert about the theft. My job was to decode the secret tactile sign language Evelyn used, a language only she and I understand, Elena explained, her calmness exasperating Malcolm. The video played. The board saw Evelyn's silent gestures. Then, Elena activated the decoding technology. The robotic voice filled the room, narrating the matriarch's translation. You are stealing from me, Malcolm... Control of Sinclair Industries belongs to Robert, not to your greed... double, quotes Malcolm's face contorted. This is digital forgery? A lie fabricated by this backwoods translator? Where is the proof that the secret language exists besides her word? The proof is in the tactile code that your lawyer, Dr. Dubois, used to hide the hard drive, which Mr. Robert and I recovered from your home, Mr. Sinclair, Elena countered, presenting the hard drive in the formatting loop. This disk contains all your transactions and communications about the fraud. Your attempt to format the data, captured by my reverse virus, proves your guilt. Malcolm realized the battle of evidence was lost. He had only one weapon left, the destruction of the messenger. He laughed, a harsh, venomous sound. All right, Let's say this Dr. Silva is real. She's a fugitive criminal. She has no credibility. Her past is as clean as mud. He turned to the board, triumphant. What Robert hasn't told you is that this woman, whom he trusts with $7 billion, is a former security engineer who fled the FBI. She hid as an aide to escape a federal investigation after a case of espionage and fraud. She's using my nephew to secure her own immunity. She is unreliable. She is a fraud. Shock ran through the room. Elena clenched her fists, feeling the heat of the exposure on her face. Malcolm had hit her most vulnerable point. Robert, who had remained silent until then, stood up. His tall body cast a shadow over the table, and the fury in his gray eyes was something the Sinclair board had never seen. Malcolm is right about one thing, Robert began, his voice deep and calm, but authoritative. He moved closer to Elena, standing beside her, a human shield against the board's contempt. Elena Silva. Indeed, worked in classified communication security operations. And yes, she stepped down after a high-risk case where her life was threatened by a criminal organization she herself dismantled. He looked directly at the board members and his uncle. Corporate hatred transformed into personal protection. But I know who she is. I know the price she paid to have the courage to come here today. She is not doing this for immunity. She is doing this for justice. She risked her life to give my mother a voice when I was too blind to see the truth, Robert declared. He touched Elena's hand. The touch was public, a confession of love and alliance before the entire elite. I love this woman, and I trust her more than I trust anyone in this room. And if you don't trust her, you don't trust me. And if you don't trust me, Sinclair Industries will go bankrupt under the weight of Malcolm's scandal, Robert finished. The vote is now, do you believe her evidence or the thief who is trying to destroy us? Robert's ultimatum silenced the room. His defense had turned the tables. Elena was no longer the former fugitive. She was Robert Sinclair's heroine, the woman he was willing to risk the empire to protect. The board chairman cleared his throat, looking from Malcolm, destroyed by fear, to Robert, imposing beside Elena. The board will vote immediately. Robert and Dr. Silva, please wait outside. Malcolm, you remain. Robert and Elena waited in the hallway, the silence more deafening than any shouting. The smell of coffee in the conference room now seemed acidic. They stood side by side, hands tightly intertwined, corporate tension and personal romance reaching their climax. If they vote against us, what will we do? Robert asked, his voice hoarse with apprehension. If they vote against us, we release all the evidence to the press. Malcolm will have to deal with the FBI and the New York Times at the same time, Elena replied, her posture unyielding. We win either way, Robert. Justice for your mother is inevitable. The boardroom door opened, and the board chairman, pale, gestured for them to enter. The board has voted, the chairman announced, his voice heavy. The stock transfer and Malcolm Sinclair's curatorship are revoked with immediate effect. The evidence presented, including Dr. Silva's testimony and the decoded tactile video, is deemed irrefutable. A collective gasp of relief and shock filled the room. Malcolm, sitting alone at the end of the table, was destroyed. His facade of power had crumbled. He looked at Elena with pure, desperate hatred. You are nothing! An aide! A liar! He roared, standing up and pointing at her. Elena remained calm, but it was time to deliver the final, public blow. You claimed I'm a liar, Mr. Sinclair, that the tactile language doesn't exist? We're going to prove to everyone that you're wrong and that your ambition blinded you, Elena said, turning to the door. She had arranged for her key witness to be brought in. Evelyn Sinclair entered the conference room, pushed by a private nurse. The matriarch was dressed with dignity, and her eyes, though silent, were full of fire. Gentlemen, Evelyn Sinclair is not incompetent. She is trapped by her silence. But she has something to say. And I will be her voice, Elena said. She approached Evelyn. Elena's hands enveloped Evelyn's, and the matriarch began to communicate in her secret tactile sign language, slowly and deliberately. So the board could see the clear movement, even if they couldn't understand. Elena translated, her voice choked with emotion, but clear. I, Evelyn Sinclair, confirm that Malcolm stole my $7 billion inheritance. He tried to silence me and ruin me. I ask this board to turn him over to the authorities. And I give all my support to Robert and the brave woman who gave me my voice back. The tactile testimony and Elena's translation were the moment of total vindication. Robert approached his mother, embracing her with tears in his eyes. Her silent weeping was the cry of victory. Malcolm tried to flee, but the police, already alerted by Robert and Dr. Thorne, entered the room. He was handcuffed right there, in front of the board table, the smell of his ruin hanging over him. You will pay for this, Robert, and you Aide, I will find you, Malcolm shouted as he was escorted out. Elena smiled, a smile of cold satisfaction. I am no longer the Aide, Malcolm. I am Dr. Silva, and the only person you will find is me on the front page of the New York Times. Justice was done. Robert had recovered his inheritance, the company, and, most importantly, his mother's dignity. The chaos of the emergency meeting was over. Robert and Elena were alone in the room, the morning sun flooding the marble, the promises of the kiss during the escape still fresh. Robert turned to Elena, his gray eyes shining with emotion and relief. The smell of victory was sweet and pure. You saved me, Elena. You saved my mother, my family, and you saved me from myself. I am nothing without your courage, he said, taking a small velvet box from the inner pocket of his jacket, the ring gleaming under the morning light. He knelt the billionaire heir before the former nurse's aide. I love you, Dr. Elena Silva. You taught me the meaning of being seen, of being valued. I don't just want you to be my partner in crime, but in life. Will you marry me and give me the honor of being your witness forever? Elena felt the warm tears streaming down her face. The woman who started invisible, underestimated, and on the run was standing tall, vindicated, and being proposed to by the man who now truly saw her. Yes, Robert, yes, I will marry you, she whispered. He placed the ring on her finger and pulled her into a long, deep kiss. The kiss of a love born under crossfire, a love that proved that the hidden skill and the courage to be seen were the true fortune.